I spent 42 years in the classroom. 4 decades watching generations of children grow up, evolve, and change before my eyes. I thought I understood kids better than most. Then my own grandchildren became teenagers, and suddenly, I felt like I was speaking a different language. I'm Margaret Wilson, retired high school English teacher and grandmother of 5. And I'm here to tell you that despite all my professional experience with young people, when it came to truly connecting with my own grandkids, I realized I had so much more to learn. The generation gap I taught about for years had somehow, without my noticing, opened up right in my own family. Today, I want to share what happened when I finally admitted I didn't have all the answers, and how it transformed my relationship with my grandchildren forever. It started at my grandson Jake's 15th birthday dinner last year. The whole family was gathered around the table, my 3 children and their spouses, and all 5 grandkids ranging from 8 to 17. I'd prepared Jake's favorite meal, or at least what used to be his favorite when he was younger, my special lasagna with garlic bread. I noticed Jake barely touched his food. When I asked if something was wrong, he mumbled, "I'm good," and kept scrolling on his phone beneath the table. His mother shot him a look and he reluctantly put the phone away, but the disconnect was palpable. After dinner, I brought out the presents. I'd spent weeks finding the perfect gift, a beautiful leather-bound collection of classic novels I thought would inspire him, just like they had inspired generations of my students. When Jake opened it, I saw something flash across his face. Not excitement. Not gratitude. It was disappointment. He thanked me politely, but I could tell the books would likely collect dust on his shelf. Later that night, when everyone had gone home, I sat alone in my living room and had to face an uncomfortable truth. I didn't really know my own grandson anymore. Despite all my experience with teenagers, I'd somehow missed how much they'd changed, how much the world had changed around them. That night was my wake-up call. I realized that if I wanted to truly connect with my grandchildren, I needed to approach them not as a teacher who had all the answers, but as a student willing to learn. The first and most obvious gap between us was technology. My grandkids were digital natives, born into a world of smartphones, social media, and constant connectivity. I, on the other hand, still printed out MapQuest directions and called my daughter whenever my computer acted up. I decided to start there. Instead of dismissing their digital lives as superficial or distracting, I asked my 17-year-old granddaughter, Sophia, to teach me about the apps she used. "Wait, Grandma, you really want to know about TikTok?" she asked, clearly surprised by my interest. "Absolutely," I told her. "I want to understand your world." What followed was 2 hours of Sophia showing me everything from TikTok to Instagram to Discord. She explained how each platform worked, what she used them for, and most valuably, how they made her feel. I learned that social media wasn't just about posting selfies or wasting time, as I'd assumed. For Sophia, these platforms were where she explored her interest in art and social justice. They were how she stayed connected with friends during the pandemic. They were communities where she found people who shared her passion for environmental activism. "It's not all good," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel bad about myself when I see perfect lives online. And there's a lot of pressure to always be available, always responding," that honest conversation revealed. Something important: my grandchildren were navigating social and emotional challenges I never had to face at their age. The constant comparison, the pressure to create an online identity, the fear of missing out, these were real stressors in their lives that my generation simply didn't experience. Instead of judging their technology use, I needed to understand it. And maybe, just maybe, there were ways I could help them navigate it with the wisdom of my years, if only I approached with curiosity instead of criticism. As I continued my journey to better understand my grandkids, I realized that the world they're growing up in bears little resemblance to the one I knew. When I was young, and even when I was teaching, the path seemed clearer. Finish school, maybe go to college, find a stable job, start a family. Today's young people face a future filled with uncertainty, climate change, political division, economic instability, and careers that might not even exist yet. I remember sitting with my 16-year-old grandson, Tyler, as he stressed over his future. "Grandma, everyone keeps asking what I want to do with my life, but how am I supposed to know? The jobs that'll be around when I graduate probably haven't even been invented yet." The anxiety in his voice was real. And it made me think about how often we older generations dismiss young people's concerns with platitudes like, "You'll figure it out," or "We had it tough too." But the truth is, their challenges are different. Not necessarily harder or easier, just different. And acknowledging that difference is the first step toward meaningful communication across the generation gap. I've also come to understand that today's young people face unprecedented pressure to achieve. My grandkids' schedules are packed with activities, advanced classes, volunteer work, and extracurriculars, all in service of building the perfect college application or resume. "I feel like I never get to just be a kid," my 14-year-old granddaughter Emma told me once. "There's always something I should be doing to prepare for my future." That broke my heart. And it made me realize how important it is for us grandparents to create spaces where our grandchildren can just be, without expectation, without pressure, without judgment. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give them is permission to simply exist in the moment. Communication across generations has always had its challenges, but today's slang, references, and communication styles evolve faster than ever before. I'll never forget the day my youngest grandchild, 10-year-old Liam, told me something was sus. When I asked what that meant, he rolled his eyes and said, "You know, Grandma, suspicious." Like in Among Us, I had no idea what Among Us was, but I made a mental note to look it up later. And I did. I even watched some YouTube videos about it, so I could understand the reference the next time it came up. That small effort to learn their language paid enormous dividends. My grandkids were genuinely impressed and touched that I cared enough to understand their world. They started teaching me new terms, explaining memes, and letting me in on the jokes. I learned that no cap means no lie, and that calling something basic isn't a compliment. I discovered that texting in all caps feels like shouting to them, and that sending a period at the end of a text message can come across as passive-aggressive. Who knew? But more importantly, I learned that language shapes how we see the world. The words and phrases my grandchildren use reflect their values, their humor, and their way of processing experiences. By learning their language, I gained insight into their perspectives. And here's something fascinating I've discovered. While I'm learning their slang and references, they're becoming interested in mine. Just last month, Sophia asked me what things were like back in my day. Instead of being offended by the implication that I'm ancient, I took the opportunity to share stories from my youth, the music, the fashion, the social movements. We found common ground in our shared experiences as teenagers, despite the decades between us. The language barrier began to fall away, replaced by genuine curiosity about each other's worlds. One of the most profound realizations in my journey to better understand my grandchildren was discovering that while our expressions of values might differ, the core values themselves often remain consistent across generations. Take respect, for instance. In my generation, respect was often about deference to authority, addressing adults as Mr. or Mrs., not speaking unless spoken to, following rules without question. My grandchildren's generation views respect differently. For them, respect is mutual rather than hierarchical. They expect to be treated with the same dignity they're asked to show others. They question authority not out of disrespect, but because they've been taught that. Critical thinking is valuable. I remember being initially offended when Jake challenged something I said about climate change. In my day, contradicting an elder would have been unthinkable. But when I stepped back and listened, I realized he wasn't being disrespectful. He was engaging in exactly the kind of critical thinking I'd encouraged as a teacher. "I respect you enough to have a real conversation," he told me later. Not just nod and agree when I think something's wrong. That was a powerful moment for me. A moment when I recognized that what I perceived as disrespect was actually a different expression of the same value I held dear. Similarly, I've found that while my grandchildren's generation may approach concepts like hard work, honesty, and compassion differently than mine did, these values remain important to them. They may define hard work as pursuing their passion with creativity and innovation rather than simply putting in long hours at a stable job. They may value honesty in the form of authentic self-expression rather than maintaining polite facades. They may express compassion through social media activism in ways my generation never could have imagined. But the underlying values, they're still there, just wrapped in different packaging. Understanding this has helped me bridge the generation gap in profound ways. Instead of focusing on the differences in how we express our values, I now look for the common threads that connect us. And in doing so, I've found much more common ground than I expected. Perhaps the most transformative insight from my journey has been the simple yet profound power of showing genuine interest in my grandchildren's lives, not as I wish they would live them, but as they actually do. I realized I'd fallen into a common grandparent trap. I was relating to an idealized version of my grandchildren rather than the real, complex people they were becoming. I was seeing them through the lens of my hopes and expectations, rather than allowing them to reveal themselves to me. So I made a conscious decision to approach each interaction with curiosity instead of assumption. I started asking open-ended questions, and this was the hard part, really listening to the answers without judgment or immediate advice. What was the best part of your day became a favorite question. Or what are you excited about right now? These simple inquiries opened doors to conversations I never expected. I learned that Tyler is passionate about game design and has actually been teaching himself coding. That Emma writes poetry that tackles complex social issues with remarkable insight. That Jake, who I worried wasn't reading at all, devours science fiction audiobooks and has thought deeply about ethical questions raised in those stories. None of these discoveries would have been possible if I'd continued relating to them based on who I thought they should be, rather than who they actually are. I've also learned the importance of entering their spaces occasionally, rather than always expecting them to enter mine. This doesn't mean I try to be cool or pretend to be one of them. Nothing makes a teenager cringe faster than a grandparent trying too hard to be hip. But it does mean making an effort to engage with their interests. I've watched anime with Sophia, played video games with Liam, and attended an environmental protest with Emma. These experiences have given me glimpses into their worlds that I never would have had otherwise. The most beautiful outcome of showing genuine interest is that it's become reciprocal. Once my grandchildren realized I truly cared about their lives and perspectives, they began showing curiosity about mine. They ask about my teaching days, my childhood, my thoughts on current events. We've developed a mutual respect that transcends the generation gap. As I work to bridge the gap with my grandchildren, I realized that many of the family traditions I cherished weren't resonating with them the way I'd hoped. The formal Sunday dinners, the holiday rituals that had remained unchanged for decades, they often felt more like obligations than celebrations to the younger generation. Rather than clinging to traditions that no longer serve their purpose of bringing us together, I decided to collaborate with my grandchildren to create new ones that honored the past while embracing the present. We started with Sunday dinners. Instead of the formal affairs they'd become, we transformed them into family cook-offs, where different family members team up each week to create a meal together. Sometimes it's me and Jake making my traditional recipes. Sometimes it's Tyler and his dad experimenting with something they found online. The kitchen becomes a place of collaboration, conversation, and often hilarious cooking disasters. For holidays, we've kept some cherished traditions while making room for new ones. Last Christmas, alongside our usual family gift exchange, we added what the kids called a creativity showcase, a time for each family member to share something they created or accomplished that year. Sophia showed her digital art portfolio, Emma read a poem she'd written, and to everyone's surprise, I shared a blog I'd started about connecting across generations. What I've learned is that traditions matter not because of their specific form, but because of the connection they foster. By being flexible about how we come together while remaining committed to the fact that we do come together, we've created new rituals that everyone genuinely looks forward to. These new traditions have become powerful tools for family communication. They create natural spaces for sharing, listening, and understanding across the generation gap. They help us see each other as full people with gifts to offer, not just roles to fill. And perhaps most importantly, they've shown my grandchildren that tradition isn't about rigidity. It's about intentionally creating meaningful moments together. It's about honoring where we've come from while embracing where we're going. When I began this journey to better understand my grandchildren, I thought I was doing it for them, to be a better grandmother to stay relevant in their lives, to offer the wisdom of my years in a way they could receive. What I didn't expect was how profoundly it would change me. By opening myself to their world, I've kept my mind active and engaged. I've gained new perspectives on issues I thought I had figured out long ago. I've rediscovered the joy of being a beginner, of learning without the pressure to master. And I've experienced the unique delight of seeing the world through fresh eyes. The generation gap is real, there's no denying that. The world my grandchildren are growing up in differs dramatically from the one I knew. Their challenges, opportunities, and ways of seeing are uniquely their own. But what I've discovered is that this gap isn't an uncrossable chasm. It's more like a garden that needs tending, a space where, with care and intention, beautiful things can grow between us. If you're a grandparent watching this and feeling disconnected from your grandchildren's world, I encourage you to approach them with genuine curiosity. Ask questions. Really listen to their answers. Enter their spaces occasionally. Show interest in what matters to them, even if you don't initially understand it. Remember that building these bridges isn't about erasing the differences between your generation and theirs. It's about creating connections despite those differences, and sometimes even through them. The effort is worth it. Because when we bridge the generation gap, something magical happens. We don't just enrich our grandchildren's lives with our wisdom and experience, they enrich ours with their fresh perspectives, their technological fluency, their questioning of systems we've taken for granted, and their hope for the future. I thought I knew my grandkids. And in some ways, as their grandmother who has loved them since birth, I did. But by admitting how much I still had to learn about them, about their world, their challenges, their dreams, I've discovered depths to our relationship I never imagined possible. The journey of understanding across generations never really ends. The world keeps changing, and so do we. But that's what makes it an adventure worth taking together. If you've found value in these reflections, please share this video with other grandparents in your life. Subscribe to Family Bonds for more conversations about strengthening connections across generations. And most importantly, reach out to your own grandchildren today. Ask them a question you've never asked before. Listen to their answer, and begin your own journey across the generation gap. Because at the end of the day, family bonds are worth the effort it takes to maintain them, no matter how many years, experiences, or TikTok references stand between you.